Hi guys, welcome to a new segment on my channel that I'm going to call 3D Printed. As you may have guessed, in this segment we will 3D print stuff. So anyhow, the idea behind the segment is I 3D print some simple part, maybe I design it too. In this case I'm going to be solving a little bit of a problem of mine. Sometimes we might go and print something off a Thingiverse that I think is cool, or basically we just 3D print stuff. Let's just leave it at that. Alright, so I mentioned solving a problem. My problem in this case is that this is my main camera and tripod that I usually use for most of the video shooting. The camera that I'm shooting with right now is usually what I use for time-lapse, and this camera here, this is a Panasonic VC, or what is it, HC-V770. So anyhow, my main issue with this is that I only get about an hour and a half worth of battery life out of it. So that's what I'm going to solve today. Now of course you could just buy a bigger battery pack for these things, but why would you do that when you already have a whole bunch of other stuff lying around? So one of the nice things about this camera, as well as the camera that I'm shooting with now, the camera that I'm shooting with now is a Sony Handycam. I think it's a CX330 or something like that. So but both of these cameras are charged from USB, which means you can get one of these power banks, which just have the USB ports on them, and charge your camera through USB. Now, this is a 10,000 milliamp hour battery bank, which should last for quite a while on just running a camera like this. But anyhow, what I want to do is have something that I can just kind of slip this into, and then have it snap onto the center pipe. I suppose you could call that a pipe. But anyhow, snap onto the center pipe, something like that. Then just be able to plug my USB cable into it and charge my camera off of it. So anyhow, in this video I'll show you some of the thought that goes into designing something like this. And I'll also, well, we'll print it. We'll have a nice time lapse of the thing printing, and then I'll show you the finished product. So anyhow, let's get to it. Alright, so this is in the process of designing the part here. Basically the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay down a square, or a rectangle technically, that matches the size of the power bank, and that's going to give me something to build around here. Now I could have made this a little bit smaller. It probably would have worked out better. It would have been a little bit of a tighter fit. As you'll see later, it's kind of loose. But anyway, I am measuring these with just a cheap pair of digital calipers, but they actually work fairly well. But anyhow, the next thing I do is draw lines that go 1/10 of an inch to 0.1 inches out on two of the corners. And then after that's done, I will put a rectangle over them. And that sets up how thick the wall is for the part. So, yeah, I'll put the rectangle between them. And that's the part that'll actually end up getting extruded and creating the walls here. Alright, so I'm going to add a couple of lines into this. This is, well, you'll see in a minute what these are actually for. Some of them are kind of pointless at this point, and I was just staking them in here so I had them. But and then delete some of the random lines that weren't really needed. Excuse me. You notice I did leave one line up in that, was that the upper left-hand corner, and you'll see what that is for here in a second. But anyhow, I started out extruding one side of that, and then extruding the other side to a slightly different depth. And you'll notice I'm doing everything in the negative direction. The reason for that is because with 123D design, you want to keep all of your sketches on one plane. Because otherwise it just gets to be a pain in the butt in the
or whatever they call it, the snap feature doesn't work very well if you start putting sketches on different planes. So it's best if you can just keep them on one plane, which is what I did. And then the next part is filling these inside edges. This is partly for strength, because with 3D printing, it's not really a great thing to have right angles or straight corners that come together really harshly. That's especially on the vertical part. Maybe not so much on this where I'm at right now, but I'll show you when it's actually more important here in a minute. But like that one might actually need to be strengthened a little bit, but most of this is for aesthetics, and also the power bank will probably fit in there better, especially considering that that power bank has the edges are filled in about the same way, so, or at least the edges are thinner than the middle of it. And a lot of this stuff's just by eye in terms of filleting versus the actual measurements and stuff. For the main thing are taken off of the power bank and the tripod and put onto here. And these outside edges I ended up doing, I think it was 0.24 on this, and it's just by eye, so it kind of matched the inside curve was the idea for that. And I ended up doing the same number for those outer two, the ones on the back side of it, or over to the right side of the screen right now. And really, a lot of this is just to make it look better. It's not too much of a point to filleting these sides, though. A lot of times with 3D printing, the layers might not line up perfectly, and when you have a perfect right angle in the 3D model, it might not look so good when they're ended up printing, or like after it's printed. Anyhow, then it's just more filled in and rounded those corners off. And rounded all the outside edges basically. Now I'm doing the bottom, extruding the bottom out of this thing, which might have been a little bit better if I would have extruded this out before I started doing all the filling on everything else, but still worked out just fine. I had to do just a little bit of extra work to get it all to match up. So again, on the 4 outside corners, just making that match at 0.24, I believe it was. I'm sorry, I'm looking at a little preview screen in Adobe Premiere here, and I can't really read anything that's on it. So I apologize, I can't actually see the numbers. Well, I kind of can, but not really. And then this fillet that's coming up here, this is the one that's actually important to the structural part of it that actually helps hold that bottom piece on. When you're going fillet, like right angles in between layers are a bad thing to have. So if you can, you want to gradually have that go up there, and that actually helps a lot with strength. So just one of the little things with 3D printing here. And then this last part is actually getting the circular piece that snaps onto the tripod. So first off, I'm just putting in a couple lines to aid in guiding where the circle needs to be put. And I think I was going 1.160, and that's a tenth of an inch bigger than the little piece of pipe on the tripod. And you'll see why it's that little bit bigger in a second here. And I went to the middle of the square. You see, if you kind of go off to the side, it will automatically find the middle of that line and snap to it. And then that's the first circle there. That's the larger one. And then the second circle is actually the size of the pipe on the tripod. And that's what's going to snap on it. So that gives you that tenth of an inch wall. So anyhow, there'll be one more line here because you don't want the whole thing to be a circle, because otherwise how are you going to get it on there? So anyhow, the last part of this will just be to extrude it. And I probably could have done this before I did the filleting as well, but still it came out pretty nicely. So I went a little bit lower with that so I could kind of make a smooth transition from it. And it worked out okay, so I'm happy with it. And then you notice I have to extrude it to a positive 0.1 as well, so it actually matches and everything's level with the bottom. And I filleted those two edges. That makes it a little bit easier to slide onto the tripod pipe, just so it's not that sharp edge that's going into it. You have some kind of a wedge shape, actually, is what you end up with that. Just makes it a little easier to snap on there. And like I said, a lot of this is just messing around with the values till you find something that you like, because while this isn't too important, that one might be a little bit structural, but not that much. Now the side ones are actually, they both look a lot better like that, but that actually does help with the strength as well. It gives it a lot more surface area to hold onto the print, if you will. So that actually will help it out stay together a little bit better. Makes it thicker too on the bottom parts. So anyhow, I'll take a look at this in the slicer program real quick. So anyhow, give you in this part, since I basically made it upside down, I had to rotate that 180 degrees on the y-axis. And I usually print everything in 0.2 millimeter layer height, which with something like this doesn't actually matter too much what you print it in, but that's just what I've printed everything in so far is 0.2. So anyway, about 25% infill or 20 or whatever I had it set out. Again, I can't really read the screen at this point. And in reality, I think it took about 4 hours and 40 minutes to fully print. So anyhow, the next part of this will be the time lapse. So you can see how well a lot of this turned out in the or how it's going to print. You can see the details in the bottom there, and go ahead and print this thing.
Alright, so this is the part that as it came off the printer here. I don't have the best layer adhesion. I probably need to turn up the temperature a little bit. Printed this with ABS at 230 degrees Celsius, but I might have to go a little bit higher still. But that's alright, because I can fix this, put a bit of acetone in here, and just make sure everything's compressed as that dries. And it'll be alright. So anyhow, it actually came out pretty nice. I don't enable cooling most of the time, just for the fact that you get a little bit better layered adhesion with it off. But you can kind of see the how that melted together on these thin parts here. Otherwise, like the outside, it turned out okay. There's a couple spots. That spot kind of cracked too. So anyway, I'll have to acetone smooth this and work on that. So I can go ahead and do that. Alright, so here is the acetone smooth part. So anyhow, here we are. The cracks close up pretty nicely. They've got at least acetone on them, so they're not going to come apart again. They should be fused together fairly nicely. But it made a nice shiny part there. Usually with the acetone smooth, I just take a brush and brush it across this. It's real simple, easy, and quick. So anyhow, that's the part. Last thing to do is to actually see if this thing works on the tripod and with the battery bank. Alright, so back to my camera. Go ahead and see if this little thing actually fits in here. So the first test, I suppose, is to take the power bank and slide it into this. Alright, that works. It's not the tightest fit, but really all it's got to do, I still do want to be able to slide this in and out of here fairly easily. But it's all it's really got to do is make sure when this thing twists that it can't really pop out of here. And it doesn't look like it's going to do that too easily, even if it's flipped like that, unless it goes further than that and slides out. But that's not too big of a concern because I don't really plan on tipping my tripod upside down. So anyway, it actually looks fairly nice. The top of that's just about flush with the power bank. You can see there, it's almost perfect actually. Alright, then on this side you can still get to the charging port for the power bank and the little button to check the how much battery is left in it. So anyhow, I suppose the last test is to see if this thing actually snaps onto a tripod, and look at that, it actually does. Fits on there fairly nicely. And we'll grab our USB and a cord here, if I can plug it in the right way. And we'll charge up our camera off of it here. So there we go. A little red light back here is blinking, indicating that it's charging. Now let's just test one more thing here. If I flip this about horizontally, that looks like it actually stays on there fairly well. So anyhow, this can be slid up and down on here too. It fits on there pretty tightly actually. And it can be spun a little bit, so that actually worked out pretty nicely. Alright guys, this is about the end of this episode of 3D Printed. This should make my filming life a lot easier for these videos, mainly because I don't have to worry about having wires running around my camera and having extension cords plugged in to get into to actually get power up to this. So this should make it quite a bit easier. And then this is all one self-contained unit now. Don't know how long this will actually run my camera, but I highly doubt that I would ever need it to run as long as this could run it. But anyway, if you enjoyed this episode of 3D Printed, stay tuned for more. Subscribe if you want to. Anyway, that's it for now, guys. Bye.